Hi, David Odell here with Odell Complete Concrete. This is our first day on the job. It's actually not my first day, but it's everybody else's first day here because I actually did the driveway at this house about 6 years ago. And they liked it so much they called me back. So here I am in the backyard and we're going to extend this patio over. The sprinkler valves are going to stay there and we're going to do a box out around them. We're going to pour up against the house there. We're going to stop short of that AC pad. Actually, we're going to stop short of those raspberries against the house. So I believe we're going about 16 feet by, I think it's 14 feet. 14 feet out from the house, 16 feet long. Instead of going square, we're going to go radius on this outside edge. And the way I established the radius is just freehand with some upside down spray paint. I just painted it out a few times in the grass till everybody was happy with the looks of it. And then we start cutting lawn. Got to get the grass out. You don't want to pour over grass or roots or anything that may decompose, because once it does decompose, it's hollow underneath the concrete and then the concrete's going to settle. So first thing, get rid of the vegetation. That tree came out relatively easy. I wanted to get my little Vermeer back here track, but it was tight, man. Getting around that side of the fireplace. It's 3 foot width Vermeer on tracks, but I would have had to take the hinges and a lot of the gate hardware off. So I said, oh, you know what? Let's just go ahead and skip the gym today and do this by hand. Now a lot of these places where I take all the material, the waste, the grass, the dirt, is to normally transfer stations that take it the long haul from there, but they do have some different varying rates, and we can get away with calling the grass green waste, so that's going to decrease your price per ton, going with green waste rather than just trash or mixed loads. Dirt, clean dirt is another different rate. Concrete's a different rate. But they all have to be one or the other. They can't be really mixed. Otherwise you get mixed, you get the trash load. That's going to run you about $90 a ton to dump locally. So this is just some bender board. I get it out of the garden section at Home Depot or Lowe's. Not all of them carry it, but normally you'll find one in your area that does. Now we're drilling this wood, and right away I realized that bit's very dull because it started smoking. So I went and found a new one, which I had in the truck. And what we're doing with that pressure treated wood there, we're matching, because he actually had the pressure treated lumber replaced in the existing patio, relatively recent. So we went ahead and bought the same wood that they replaced it with. That way we would match that pattern all the way through the new patio edition. And the reason I'm drilling holes through it is because I want to run rebar all the way through to tie all the sections together, instead of having 4 or 6 independent sections that'll just kind of float wherever they want. I'm going to run rebar. I'm going to oversize the holes on these dividers because I want to have concrete flowing through the holes around the rebar, tying each section together. So there's the boards that were replaced in the existing patio. And now I'm going to line up a string line on that so my new boards will be straight with the existing boards. I went with 3/4 inch holes on this wood, and I'm using 3/8 bar, so we'll have a little bit of concrete wrapped around them to seal it from moisture going down through the top and rusting the rebar out. And on top of that, what I'm going to do on these rebars that go through the actual wood, I'm going to grease them. I'm going to heavy grease them with some axle grease to also act as another water repellent for water possibly going down through those joints and rusting the rebar out. So I went to a few different measures that you probably have never seen, or you might have, but it just depends. Also, we're drilling here into the existing concrete. We're gonna just drill some 3/8 holes, and we're gonna drill and drive. So what they used to call it on the drawings, drill and drive rather than epoxy. Drill and drive works like a charm. They're real hard to get out once you pound them in there with the 8-pound sledge. Now we've got some short wood stakes here. Of course, something has to be there to hold that divider in there, so we're going to have to leave them in there. And we'll just cut them down as low as possible, just above the nail that holds the form in. As you can see there, we got 2 nails, and that's well below grade. So we won't have a crack off the top of that stake because we've got a good 2 inches over it. Now we're going to feed these rebars through. We're going to grease them heavy right at that joint, about 6 inches either side of that wood. That way the water will not penetrate to the steel, if any ever gets in there. What else this does is it holds the 2 sections together so they don't shift from one another. You could have this board floating and then dig a massive channel underneath the wood and have concrete go underneath it to tie the 2 in. Then you could bend your rebar underneath. But the way I did it is a lot easier and quicker. It's more efficient for this particular scenario. Later on, what we're going to do, and we haven't done it yet, but what we're going to do after we get this concrete in here is we're actually going to stain and resurface the entire back patio so it looks like it was all done at one time. So I have to wait about 30 days before I go to that procedure. So I want to make sure that we get all the moisture out of the concrete and it's cured out before I put the coating on the surface. And once I do that, all the blemishes on the old patio, defects from the surface from being there for the last 40 years will be invisible. Now I put some tape on the top of this wood to try to protect it from getting concrete residue on it. It didn't work out too well because we get a lot of moisture overnight here in this area, condensation and overcast. So the tape came off the very next morning when I got here to pour it. I just pulled it all off because it was not adhering to the wood at all. So I decided what I'll do, if there is any residue that I don't clean off the day of the pour, I'll just bring my hand sander, maybe like a 120 grit, something like that, and just lightly sand the top and clean it up that way. This is a 3000 psi pea gravel 3/8 rock. Also, I have fiber mesh in here, and if anybody wants any fiber mesh, I have a really good source. So if anyone needs any, I can get fiber mesh for anybody out there for $3 a pound. And I use about a half a pound per yard myself. And with a half a pound per yard, you really don't, it really doesn't affect your finish at all, any kind of finish you want. But what it does do is it prevents shrinkage cracks. That means the first 24 hours of the concrete drying, you sometimes can get shrinkage cracks. Well, it helps prevent that to some degree. Also, a nice thing about the fiber mesh is you can saw cut it the next day without any spalling. So what we have here is just a straight edge 2x4, and we're going to use that to screed the concrete off with. A 6 sack cement. In order to achieve a 3000 psi on a pea gravel, this is a 6.5 sack mix. So 6.5 sacks, 94-pound bags of cement per cubic yard. And that's what they're going to say is 3000. That gives them about a 3000. Of course, it's over engineered, so it'll probably break at 4000, 28 days. Typically, that's kind of what you want to see. The minimal is going to be 3000. Oh, I have that fiber mesh on my storefront, and there's a link in the description of the YouTube channel for my store, and what's actually listed as my shirts, because my shirts are in there also. Another thing that worked out nicely about drilling those holes through those dividers is it actually acted as dobies through that center area, so we didn't really have to lift up the rebar anywhere else other than the edges. Well, this is a walking edge or half-inch radius, 10 inches wide. And you notice I modified that where the handle meets the actual tool. I actually took my right angle grinder and cut either end, so I could actually put 2 to 3 pulls on this and still pull the edge back without getting it buried. I crowned the middle of that center divider against the house. I crowned it there so the water runs both directions in the backyard from that point. That's a 4-foot wide magnesium bowl float with a rocker on it. So the wider your bowl float is, the flatter your concrete's going to get. So Sam went out there on the old school plywood, and he just walking out there cleaning the top of that divider off with a sponge and water. A lot of cases plywood works better than sliders, especially on a hill or other certain scenarios. Might have been a blade of grass in the concrete there they just picked out. That's my son, Timothy Odell. He's got a double rounded. That's also known as a pool trowel. It's got the short shank in the middle. A very forgiving trowel. Here's a broom I picked up from Concrete World when I was out there in Vegas. And that orange room, I didn't really care for it because it left a lot of dingleberries on the concrete, little like boogers. It kind of dropped them randomly. It's nothing that would stay there indefinitely, but it's something that, well, when you want to go there the next day to do your cleanup, they're gonna be there. It's a commercial type broom, I would have to say. The broom that I like is this one here. It's horsehair and nylon, half and half. The nylon holds the horsehairs from rolling and falling sideways, so all the bristles stay straight. And the horsehair is just a little bit longer than the nylon. That mow strip there was actually lower, and I put a pry bar under it and raised the elevation of it. That's your finished product. Now in 28 days I come back here and I put a coating on it. I'm going to use a Bear product for this coating. It's called Deck Over. It's good for wood, concrete, metal, a lot of different surfaces. Holds up well. I've used it before on a job I did about 4 years ago. It's still holding up well, so I think I'm just going to use the same product on this one. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a good day, and if you like these, subscribe and hit the like button, and talk to you later.